I am a failed minimalist.
No, come on.
I'm a woman that doesn't collect bags or shoes. Like
You're about chairs.
I like designer chairs. And
Feels like a
never-
60s.
never do
It feels
this.
like a 60s like dating game or like, you know, couples game, you know.
Who's more likely to end up in prison?
Oh my god. Probably her.
Cool.
So, welcome to another episode of the Dope Designer Club. Today, my guests are Jade and Danny from Modern for All. They are purveyors of modern design, and they preserve pieces that have been long lost from all kinds of wonderful designers from the mid-century, which I'm personally obsessed with. So, Jade and Danny,
Hi.
welcome.
How are you?
Thank
Thanks for having us, Bronca.
Yeah. Welcome. It's been a drive for you. I understand
A
you
little bit,
drove
yeah.
from
little bit.
Upland.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Fine. So I hope that was okay for
We
you.
make this drive
Yes.
pretty often, so it's
Good,
not
yeah.
too bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's usual.
So, Jade and Danny, you are a couple. You're
Yes.
partners in life
Yes.
and partners in business. Let's start off with that. Like, what's that like?
I'll let Jade start because she came into the design business a little bit after I did, so I'll let her sort of kind of tell her experience with that.
Yeah, I mean, as working as a couple, so the question that we get asked a lot in the store is, don't you guys ever get bored of each other? Like, aren't you guys just like sick of each other sometimes? And to us, we're like, no, because we have, number one, we have like 2 different stations.
Yeah.
So we work in different areas of the workshop and the
Yeah.
store, and we have different roles. And then as personality wise, I mean, we kind of bounce off of each other.
Yeah.
And so, you know, sometimes I can be very like, oh, come on, let's do this, let's do that. And then
Yeah.
he's like, wait a minute, we got to kind of like just take it step by step. And
Yeah.
so we have like a balance, I guess, like you could say. And then because we have the same type of passion and same type of interest, maybe not the same backgrounds all the time, but the same type of goals and interests, it keeps us like motivated to go into the shop every day. Like that's our like relaxing time where we're like, oh cool, we get to work on you know, what our big goal is in life, you know. So these are like life goals. These aren't like, this is not just like something we, you know, are trying to do
to
as
just
a job,
yeah,
you know?
to kind of add to that or to kind of expound on it a little bit. I went to Art Center College of Design. I've been immersed in design since I was out of high school, getting into Art Center, being a fan of architecture, of anything that was industrial design related. And her background is in counseling. And the connection point between us is that we both have the same approach when it comes to loving the pieces and why we love them, right? And so because we share that, it tends to be really easy to coexist in decision making, and a lot of the things that come with running a business it's very similar to being married. And so you're making a lot of decisions together and you're making a lot of hard decisions together. And so that tends to lend itself really well to work with her. So
I love that. I love everything that both of you said. So Jade, you mentioned that like you work in different parts of the shop or store. Tell me who does what.
Yeah, so Danny does, well, he's been doing this for 10 plus years. And me, it's about 5 years, about.
right on.
But it feels like 15.
Right?
Working with me for sure.
Seriously.
Working with me for sure.
I mean, yeah, and it's like, it's funny that you mentioned that. Yeah, and it's just like because we're in different roles, it's like, you know, especially because I'm new to it, it's like, you know, who am I as a person, like to say anything about design, because that's not my background in education. But in growing up together in a way, like, you know, we were able to both appreciate design. So, and he went to school for it. So role wise, you know, I'm in the front of the shop, you know, I'm the one trying to come up with like new ideas and different process of what we're doing to make it more streamlined, how to get us more out there. And then Danny's, you know, another part of the roles.
Well, I'll give you more credit than you give yourself. No. So Jade, there's parts of restoration, because that's an integral part of what we do, right? We're taking pieces that have been lived with for generations and we're breathing new life into them. And then we're looking for new buyers, right? So Jade has taken it upon herself to learn how to do Danish cord weaving, split cane weaving, a lot of the day-to-day like restoration aspects that sometimes customers ask us, how do you care for this piece, or how do you give it new life when you don't need a full restoration? She's really mastered and learned that part of it, and that's where her station and her skill set lies. Where as when it comes to what I do, is I do the more traditional. I'm getting the lead, I'm getting the call of the person that owned these pieces. I'm going out to find them. My knowledge base is having an encyclopedia of what I'm looking at any given moment. And then in the workshop, I have some skill set from design school and growing up in a wood space, in a wood shop. So we both have compatible skill sets that don't tend to overlap too much, but they help us because there's things that I'm just not good at that she's really mastered, right? So weaving, I'm always like, okay, but you're gonna take that on, you're gonna do that, and in any time that it's more of like pushing us out there in terms of doing a TikTok video or doing something that gets me out of my shell, that's where Jade excels. Like she excels in getting our brand a little bit more notoriety than I tend to give it. I tend to let my product photography just do the work for itself, right? And so yeah.
Amazing. I think there's actually a lot of things that you both said that kind of ticked a few things for me.
Yeah.
Jade, when you're talking about like, oh, I don't have a design background. To me, I feel like your work, in counseling and social work is actually very relevant in our field, because
100%.
To me, design is all about care.
Exactly.
And I feel like that you truly belong here, if you know what I mean. And I think
100%.
that's such a wonderful like synergy that
Yeah.
you guys have, and I think that's why you're excelling at such a high level.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that for me, it was like when I was trying to learn design, and I went to like architecture, I went to the library and I got like books on like literally like what walls are made out of, and I just wanted to learn all about it because, and for my process, it's like looking at books and watching, YouTube videos on actual like museum talks and stuff. That's how I learn, and I really want to get immersed in it. And then I fell into the practicality of it, and then also why maybe that was explored at that time. So like the Eames, right? We're probably going to be mentioning different people like this, but
it's important.
It's important, yeah. And so when mentioning them, it's like it was the revolutionary period of different groups at that time, where it was after war, and or it was different materials that they could work with, or different things that they can experiment with, and that was so just inspiring to me. Like, how can you still meet the need of being practical? Yes, it's a chair, but then how can you extend that a little bit more with the care and how the body fits in a chair, and how it feels, like the textures with Alexander Gerard, like when they brought him in for, the different materials and the fabrics that they're using, everything went into
the
detail.
thought process behind it.
Yeah, and so it was, to me, it's like it mattered because that's how I dealt with, let's say, my students. It wasn't just, let's get them in here and talk about a class or something. That was not what I did as a counselor. I was more therapist, kind of like, where taking down their problems and everything and trying to figure out a solution for survival. And so this
what
connected.
I wanted to say, it's like it's the same like type of care about like the end user or the client, or the people who are using the space, and truly like taking the time to understand that person, or how they're using space, or the chair, or what their body is like, or how we're. I mean, you guys are not very comfortable.
I mean, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. I think the questions are gonna get us together.
Right.
Good. So, Danny, you mentioned that you kind of go on these like scouting calls, and what is that like? So, it seems like it's kind of like an adventure, like finding.
It can be very adventurous, but it can also be very scattershot at times, because you never know when the call is going to come. So the main thing that we try to tell each other is just to be prepared with your knowledge base and prepared with resources, right? And so the way that happens is we make a lot of connections, right? There's a lot of connection points, and it's important that you know, when somebody's designing something, they're grabbing inspiration from a lot of different points. It relates very much so to what we do. When we make a connection with somebody by selling them something, if they're interacting with Jade or they're interacting with me, that person has a lasting, you know, impact. There's an impact there. And so what ends up happening is down the line, whether they're trying to sell the thing back or they know somebody that has a collection that purchased them decades ago, they then call us. And so we have to be ready at any given moment. It's exhilarating when you get the call. And, you know, for example, we had a house here off of Skirball Road that there was 2 Papa Bear chairs in. And the Papa Bear chairs were designed by Hans Wagner. And it was a house that was full of stuff and it was still intact from 1950 something, right? And if I wasn't prepared, or if we weren't prepared at any given moment to drop everything and go, we wouldn't have gotten the call. We wouldn't have gotten into the situation where we can acquire those pieces, right? And so what you're saying about connecting those or caring is about that endpoint is important, because you never know what connection is going to get you the lead that then becomes that call you get at X amount, you know, whether it's late at night or early in the morning, that's going to make you drop everything. And there's an Eames lounge chair from 1956 sitting there. Right. So we've gotten to a system now where we tend to not overthink it. We just like to be prepared about when we do get the call, knowing what they're telling us they have and knowing how to approach that person with as much of an altruistic mindset as possible, right? It's not just a transaction to us. It's and the same thing goes with selling. You know, it's hoping to make a cohesive altruistic connection that can 5 years down the line pays dividends for us or to the person that's owning it.
Yeah, I get it. It's not just like stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. But it is. You do get that exhilarating feeling.
But it's not just stuff.
You do get that exhilarating feeling that, you know, they dramatize on American Pickers or shows like that, right? Like it's not really like that for us at times. It's a little more practical in the sense that if it has to feel right, if the call feels right and the piece feels right, and we've had good experiences with the pieces and, you know, in other times, then more often than not, the moment that we restore it and the moment that we sell it, it's going to be the same sort of feeling. So we're trying to replicate that as much as we can.
The way I discovered you was through, we were just talking about this, through a video.
Okay.
And I think it was a video of something. And then I kind of got to like look at your page and like we totally like connected on Instagram. Like so, and I personally have a bit of a fetish with designer chairs.
Yeah.
So I'm a woman that doesn't collect bags or shoes. Like
you're about chairs.
I like designer chairs.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, I was telling you earlier, and I'll repeat it now for our audience. Like, my mother was visiting me about a year and a half ago, and she at some moment said, "Branka, you know, I think you kind of have a problem. Like, your house is too small for the amount of furniture you have.
Yeah.
And chairs in particularly." And I know about this stuff. And she said, like, I counted, and you have 23 types of chairs in your house, some of which I have more than
I wouldn't say that's a bad thing.
Right. So there's definitely places to sit, I guess, when you count.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, I'm super into the type of stuff that you're, you know, selling, that you're promoting, that you're into. And I think, you know, that's like a really strong connection for me. But I think in like, for me, and kind of going through your photos and videos, like I actually discovered a lot of things that like I never knew about. Like there's these really kind of, I wouldn't say obscure, but like definitely like out of production, like pieces that I haven't seen before looking at your
like our pages.
Yeah. What is like for you, what is like the motivation to try to like kind of give new life maybe to these pieces that aren't everywhere, right? And I think that's what I appreciate, because I like things. I mean, we all have an Eames chairs, like, right? So, but like, there's so much out there. There's such a richness in this movement. Was there like, I mean, I'm going off on a tangent.
No, that's good.
Was that like intentional? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
I'll let you start.
I was gonna say you can start.
Okay,
Yeah.
so my thought process on that is we tend to think of design, in my perspective, in the way I've consumed it. I'm an art center dropout, by the way. So it's like I'm not an industrial designer by discipline. I tend to look at design as any other consumer would, right? And just by de facto being somebody that curates and seeks out vintage design, I tend to meet the children of people that were like us, people that were aficionados on design, people that were architects like you, Bronca. What ends up happening is that design, because it is so popular, becomes ubiquitous, right? Like everybody tends to interact with some form of design every day. And it creates a sense of like numbness to it. So the reason we seek out things that are not so well known is to highlight the fact that there was a process in design and a process in the variety of things sort of kind of created a narrative like what was popular and what wasn't. So by getting the obscure thing, it's related to the popular thing. There were guys that were copying each other. The guys that did create an iconic design, they were informed by that not so popular design. And so those are the reasons why like guys like that are design nerds, quote unquote, we all geek out over like a plywood chair that is unknown, that was like a build your own like take home kit, because that chair then informed another chair. And so that's one of the reasons we bring out chairs that are sort of like maybe like you wouldn't see everywhere. That's a little bit of one of the reasons.
Or like giving that space that maybe for that artist to get recognized, or like you said, you know, for maybe design to get recognized that wasn't even thought about or forgotten or something. Yeah. Where it's like you're almost giving a voice to that person that maybe has passed already. Yeah. But I mean, you're giving that voice, or to that family even. Yeah. Like sometimes it's just a family that just appreciates the type of enthusiasm, I guess, that we bring to the table, where it's like, wow, this is awesome, you know, as we're going through their house. So it's bringing light.
And the context that then that thing is placed in, right? A lot of times when we find things, they're either in disrepair, or the family that has had them for 10, 15, 20 years after they inherited them isn't contextualizing them the way that a designer would. And when they're brought to that light, everybody just, even the people that owned it, they're just like, oh my God, I never saw it for what it was, right? And so that's really important for us. Not only is it highlighting the designers that Jade mentioned, but it's bringing forth like designs that are sort of forgotten, right? So
so we were just talking about how I feel like that the type of like design you promote is a little bit off the beaten path. Yes. And I really like that because anybody can go to Design Within Reach and buy an Eames chair for $5 or $10 grand, right? And I think that as much as we all admire the Eameses, I think it's like it's almost become like this thing like anybody who wants to be seen as somebody who appreciates good design like has one of those. So I think in my work I've been trying to at least introduce some other things, and I think what you're doing is even maybe like more, because some of these designers like haven't been in production for like decades. And I actually had to write it down. I don't know who this is, but like there was this Adrian Purcell.
Okay,
There was this sofa that I thought was just so brilliant. And it kind of made me think about design. Like designing furniture. And I love that because it's really, it's kind of like critical thinking. It's critical thinking that we don't see anymore. Like, because I think design and furniture has become so commercialized, and production, and everyone has the same thing. And so it's about originality, it's about thinking creatively. So a lot of these things, like, I think it definitely provoked me to think about that in kind of following you guys.
I was just going to add to your thought. For us, like I kind of thought about what you guys were talking about in the kitchen when we got here. Okay. About how you wanted a collected space.
Yeah.
To tie that into what you're both saying.
Okay.
So
tell us that story.
So tell us, tell Bronca the story.
We were mentioning earlier when we just got here, it's always like bridging that how I'm a counselor, or how I was a counselor, and the type of work I was
Yeah.
involved in, and then how is this related to
Yeah.
it, or my interest, I guess you could say. But I remember when I was back in college, I must have been like, I don't know, like 18, 19, let's say. And I remember I was watching a lot of those shows where it was like a lot of home shows. Oh, decorate your place this way, and we'll make over your kitchen or whatever. And so I thought, okay, I think I can do that. And so I had a budget of $100, and I went to like a little department store. I can't remember at that time if it was Ross or TJ Maxx or something like that. And I went to some type of little store, and I bought, filled up the basket with $100 worth of stuff. I mean, like little knickknacks, little, like maybe an accent this, accent that little chair or something. And I brought it all back to my space. I decorated it. I decorated probably like in 20 minutes, it felt like. And the whole process was pretty quick, and I did not feel connected to it. It's like once I got into it, once I put it all in place, I'm like, it looks pretty for sure, and I like it, and it's kind of the aesthetic I was going for, but I don't feel connected. And so ever since then, it's always been like my a journey, I guess, of like how to get connected,
how to create a collected space. Yeah. So the reason I made you tell that story, because I was going to tell Branca about the Adrian Persol tangent, that we're talking about is the fact that like the reason that our product inventory is varied is there's two reasons. Number one, we tend to not have control over how we curate, in a sense that when we get the call, when we get that lead, like you mentioned, we don't know what's inside the house, right? So the person could have had all Herman Miller, all Eames, all Knoll, or they could have had Adrian Persol and a combination of everything else. It's a collected lifestyle.
Right.
So design, when it comes to furniture collecting, it's very much a collected approach. So the same story that Jade mentioned about, I was still in design school, so I had no control over getting her vintage pieces for her space at the time, right? But the people that were meeting, their approach and the way that they were interacting with the pieces, whether they were interacting with the person making them or not, they were collecting their space. And the reason that Persol is like such like an iconic person, like an iconic name, is not so much because his pieces were so well constructed per se. It's more so because he made statement pieces that lended themselves toward creating like an environment that was cohesive, right? And so it goes back to saying, like what Jade's saying is, when you can find a piece and it works with the space, you can find other pieces that work around it, and it's not just a plug and play approach where you can go to one store and find everything, right?
I mean, there's also like this thing, back to Jade's point about like not connecting. I feel like that a lot of the stuff that's maybe pushed out these days in terms of like design, it is like this kind of like artificial aesthetic, or like this whole I guess life design or lifestyle design even. So when you're like looking at, say, inspiration images or like certain brands I'm not going to mention, it feels very kind of artificial, back to that word. And I think it is because it's not informed by life. It's just separate from life. So what is your take on like design and life, and can design help us lead a better life?
Perfect.
Okay, so the way I think of it is, it's related to why somebody would want an Adrian Persol couch to begin with, right? We tend to think of that generation or that era as a golden era, right? Of design, of innovation, of a lot of different things. There was a lot of other factors in that era, but and the design space, we tend to think of it as something that was very optimistic, right? So I think that we can basically live our life. We can take a little bit of a page out of their book, in the sense that when we get to interact with the people that we're buying from, the main theme that I always take away is they were buying these things because they were committed to living the lifestyle of having this piece in their home. They were committed to not only the ideals maybe that the design had, or the ideals of the designer, but they wanted their home to look a certain way. And they knew that by buying this piece and the other piece and collecting slowly, that they would be able to have a collected interior that gave them a better lifestyle, right? So we always use the Eames house as a reference, or even the Maloof residence, because their interiors aren't only strictly mid-century modern pieces.
Right,
It's
right.
a very collected lifestyle. So when you see these artificial feeling interiors, it's because everything seems to have been bought in one place and then placed in one place.
Yeah,
And
it feels fake.
it
right?
feels fake. It feels, one of our approaches on social media is to not make it feel fake,
Yeah.
to make it feel like it is a collected interior, even though we're putting it together in a pretty short period of time, right?
Yeah.
And that comes with cohesiveness and knowing what we have available when we're sourcing, but also in understanding how people were living when we buy the things.
Yeah.
And so I think to answer your question in a shorter way is, if you're buying things you love, you're always going to have a life that's reflective of that. So, just seeing your space, I can tell that you love your stuff.
Right.
And so I don't think that it's a bad thing.
I am a failed minimalist.
No, come on.
That's basically my style.
Yeah.
Perfect. Plus, I have a kid, and
we have two.
My goodness, as you know, when you have a kid, you can't live in a space, and you can't live in a
total
museum.
curated.
Sure.
Yeah,
Exactly.
no.
So, and I like actually that kids also inform the space.
Sure.
Before having a kid, I dressed differently. Like I was in black and beige. I mean, I'm beige now, but like. My daughter actually introduced me to color.
Okay.
Somehow the world.
Yeah, they see the world differently. Yeah.
Totally,
Like before her, it was black and white.
Yeah.
And with her, it's like
Yeah.
in color. So I think that's also cool. Tell me what's it like, like having kids too. Like
Yeah,
It's a
I know
journey.
you juggle a lot of stuff.
Yeah, no, I think that, and going back to like what you said of design and lifestyle, and it's totally that. It's like, that's why we don't get bored of each other, or that's why we feel motivated every day to go in, because this is our lifestyle. This is what we care about. This is what we are motivated to do. And so, like, especially having the kids around, I think they bring a new perspective of how they even interact with the different pieces, or how they play with certain things, or they're like, "Mommy, I'm just making tea," and it's like a really fragile thing.
Or then we know why a chair wasn't successful to begin with, right? Like, it's like if the child or growing family couldn't interact with the chair, like Jade's saying, it's like maybe that chair's not for somebody that has a family.
Or how we were redoing a chair, just like cleaning it up, and it was like a little high chair. It was a Nana Ditzel high chair.
Yeah.
And it was pointed out to me from our intern Sky. She was like,
Who's here?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's very important. We were redoing a Nana Ditzel high chair. And I was thinking about, okay, as I'm redoing this, as I'm cleaning it, re-oiling it, things like that, I'm thinking, what's gonna be in this chair? It's a baby. And so I thought, okay, it's gonna be, usually with us that happened, they were chewing on the chair, chewing the little sides of the chair. So everything that we refinish it with, it was like safe for a child to be with.
Oh, that's
and so, it was brought to us where it's like, oh, I wouldn't even think about that if I were to do that chair, because I don't have kids. I wouldn't think about that. But you guys, because you live with it, it's now you're able to add that extra perspective that can help that family maybe later on. That we feel safe of selling it, and we feel safe with that family that can appreciate it. So
I think for me, it's like adding to that, it's because we're seeing things sort of at their end of life term design, right? Like prominent design, or even just obscure design, just design in general. We're able to deconstruct it and then sort of apply it into a modern setting. So like with that chair, or with any, we do a lot of molar chairs where Jade does the weaving, I'll do the refinishing, and everything's very tactile. And so you sort of kind of see like where the wear marks are. You see how people lived with certain things.
Oh, that's so
that I
interesting.
think that at times, like when I was in design school, you're designing something, you're thinking about your target buyer, you're thinking about the usability, but do you ever get to see the life cycle of it, right? So we're able to really see that. And that really informs how we market, and also how we then tell the person how to use it when we sell the thing to them. And instead of selling them on anything that we don't know the data behind it, we actually can see the data and we can show them. So that's a really important part of it.
I also kind of like this kind of aspect of your work where preservation, it's kind of like adaptive reuse in architecture, like where there's so much like building inventory.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's actually harder to give the building new life than to like demolish it and start a whole new building made out of like whatever cardboard, whatever. And I feel like you do the same with these pieces.
Sure.
And I think there's also like a sustainability aspect to that as well. Like we're not like endlessly consuming new plastic chairs. Maybe if we buy this chair that's been like so carefully like rehabilitated, given new life, maybe we'll appreciate it more. What are your thoughts on this process?
Yeah, I would say that we're real careful of using the term sustainability, because we don't want to make it seem like if you buy from us, you're going to be a sustainable person, like too, where it's like too perfect.
I just also love how modest you are. It's like I think you should scream from the top of your lungs, this is so sustainable, because even if you make it out of recycled material, it's still less sustainable than restoring an existing chair.
I guess it's because I want to sell it on the intrinsic value of the piece. And so it's like, not only can we appreciate it, but then you're right. That's what we think about all the time. Even the materials that we use to refinish it, it's like, how can we be better for the environment?
Be more
how
efficient.
Can we, like Danny was saying, like when you went to design school and you're designing things and you're thinking, okay, I keep on designing new designs that, how are they going to be used in the world? Like, how are they just going to be thrown away 10 years later, or can they be used forever? And so, or not, essentially forever, but that's what we think about our pieces. That it's like, how can we bring this piece back where somebody else can appreciate it, whether it be a simple upholstery or refinishing the wood, depending on what the situation is. But yeah, it is sustainable buying this furniture.
We tend to not want to use the term green, and the term greenwashing comes into form because our industry, I mean, even though it seems like a niche, it's a pretty bustling industry of people wanting to do what we do, right? And we see ourselves more as preservationists that are taking something that already has intrinsic value, giving it new life, and then hopefully it's being used for another generation like it was originally, right? We are not green in the sense that we are still using chemicals. We are still using materials to give that thing new life. Sometimes we do have to do the upholstery again. Sometimes we do have to use latex foam again, right? Some of those things aren't very green, but in terms of it giving it a new lease on life and not having it for it to go through the whole manufacturing process again, yes. I mean, yes, that's something that we can be proud of, but at the same time, it's we never want to kind of sell somebody on the fact that maybe it's sustainable, because it's not necessarily sustainable. It's more the parallels that I always use when anybody asks about an Eames lounge chair. We do a lot of Eames lounge chairs. Is what is the process?
Because that's what everybody knows. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And honestly,
and sometimes they're more expensive if they're vintage.
So that was going to be sort of my segue into the fact that the vintage Eames pieces, and we use Eames a lot as a term, or vintage Danish pieces, tend to be more collectible and desirable than the current production DWR lineup, right? Yeah. Number one, I tend to realize it's because they used better materials back then that were going to be, they weren't sustainably harvested per se, but they were going to last a longer period of time.
Sorry to interrupt. There's also like vintage fakes.
Yes.
Yes.
There's vintage fakes and new fakes, right?
And sometimes the vintage fakes are more appreciated than the authentic new production.
Well, that kind of ties into what you're saying about the obscure stuff.
Which is like,
right?
So
the parallel that I use with customers when they're looking at a chair is, how would you restore a vintage car? A vintage car still needs parts. You still need to do certain things to it. But having that vintage car is sometimes more desirable, or it's a status symbol, but you're giving a car life versus manufacturing another vehicle that you technically could need or don't need every model year. You don't need a car every model year, right? So those obscure designs that you're mentioning, it's sort of the same approach. How do I make it better than it being an inferior piece to another?
So here's another question. Like, so what I was kind of wondering also in your process is like, and we're totally geeking out at this point.
Yeah.
Like really deeply.
Yeah. People were like, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah. So, for example, you find like some piece, and I actually wanted to ask you something else, but like let me get back to this. Do you like just try to make it like authentic what it was then, or do you like pick fabric that's like fun and like would be cool now?
Yeah, we have
Who makes that?
We have
call?
different approaches.
Yeah, we have different approaches. Yeah.
Not that they're non-cohesive, but it's very case by case.
Mhm.
Yes.
So we're finding things that were used different. They might have been made by the same company, but they were used in entirely different ways by different people, and they have a different lifespan, and they've been aged differently. And then there's, if you're into like sneakers or into anything that has like a collectible like value to it, you want like, or a car, you want a numbers car, a car that has all the parts from the same model year.
Got it.
And so it's the same approach with a chair that is very special. But then there's other chairs that they're just parts chairs, and somebody just wants them to be utilitarian, and so then we just kind of make the call.
Yeah.
And in terms of fabric, it's a little bit like what we like and what the current trends are, but it's also
like
boucle, yeah.
Yeah,
We tend to kind of have a love-hate relationship with it. But boucle, or even like the tweeds were big back in the 50s and 60s, right? Like orange and aqua. And it's like, we tend to not want to go that route if the piece doesn't say it wants that.
Right.
A Persol couch, like Jade knows, like whenever she knows, like I'm looking for a Persol chair, she's like, okay, we're going to do orange, or we're going to do, and it's like, we try to not be too gimmicky when it comes to that.
Right.
We try to almost collect the data from the end users that we've already had a track record with to dictate what that is.
I also appreciate through this. By the way, like we were not friends before. This time we're kind of eye to eye. Like I really appreciate how you guys have so much integrity. You know, like how you don't want to be like these fake greenwashing. Like, you know, like and there's a lot of that. Like trust me, like even like with my peers and in my kind of space.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that you have a lot of integrity in what you do. Let's talk about it for a moment. Vintage IKEA.
Oh yeah.
IKEA.
You know about this?
I saw it.
Okay.
Yeah,
We were just talking about this.
it.
Okay. It's a running joke within my friends are probably gonna make fun of me, and through extension, they're gonna tell Jade like how I'm into it. But
No, I like it.
yeah, no, she likes it too. So people think of IKEA as like throwaway stuff, right? But it wasn't always that way.
No, some of this stuff is like really
There's
well-designed.
legitimate designers working for IKEA, right? There's like a legitimate industrial designers working for IKEA. Case in point, the bagel shaped lighting collection and vase collection, right?
Yeah, I have those.
That we just bought a lamp, and my friends are going to be.
They're out
all
of.
over
By the way, they ran out of them.
Not
And
only
they're kind of for IKEA, they're kind of expensive.
yeah.
Too.
Not only is there obviously we haven't broached on the arbitrage value of these things, right? Like the buying and reselling.
I'm hoping mine one day like will be.
Okay, so that's kind of what I mean. So IKEA back in the 50s and 60s, I don't know the exact. I'm going to paraphrase the history of IKEA, but the founder wanted to make affordable furniture, and at the time, a lot of the Danish designers were trying to market their stuff towards America, towards the booming middle class in America. And so they were designing flat pack furniture to ship over in containers, right? So IKEA sort of was involved in all of that. And so a lot of the first few decades of IKEA, you would mistake for Scandinavian furniture that's just like nice Scandinavian furniture.
Right.
What we know of as IKEA now isn't what it was then. So the IKEA that we know now, like the vintage IKEA, is like there's a chair called the barrel chair. What is it called? I forget. The name is escaping me, but there's a chair that was designed in like 2000, and it's super iconic now because the shape is iconic. The shape is something that's lending itself to the interiors nowadays. And so the vintage IKEA sort of craze comes from there being these specific moments in time where the trend and IKEA were like connected.
Aligned.
And then those tend to be super super collectible. So
Got it.
yeah. And
Can you tell me like a really like weird or quirky story with either a customer or
There's a
or
lot.
like I imagine there's a lot of like weirdness like when you go to someone's house that's like frozen in time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's that too.
You're more on the outside and sometimes than I am because I'm like talking my ear off, but you can tell I got a little bit.
I mean,
about that.
there's so many stories. I just I'm trying to think of one that could be something tellable, but I mean, sometimes when we walk into homes, I'll just start out with saying, just sometimes when we walk into homes, like you said, we don't know what we're walking into.
Yeah.
There's been times where it's like, you know, we can't even walk on the floor kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's been times where it's like, they'll say, oh yeah, come in, come down and see all this stuff that we have. But
Any
then,
quarters?
oh yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to be, yeah, but yes.
sometimes, right? Or like they can't help it, right? Like sometimes their parents just pass or something and they're moving.
Yeah.
And so they sometimes don't know what to do with, the type of collection and they know it's valuable, but they don't really know how to disperse it. Yeah, I would say
You can tell her about Vince. He's a little quirky customer.
we have quirky customers that kind of hang out at the shop as far as
You want to give a shout out?
Yeah,
right?
so Vince Ramirez, he's a customer turned friend. But
Yeah.
what ends up happening is, Jade will tell you a bit more about it, but what ends up happening is a lot of times, because there's these special connections with things, we make connections with people. And those people tend to circle back around and always kind of look out for the certain special pieces that they know that either Jade's really good at, like fixing, or they know that I'm really good at finding. And the funny interactions happen when they just get really exasperated or happy that we have said thing in the shop. And so it's like Jade's experienced that.
Yeah. Or they'll come in and because they know Danny from Instagram, they'll be like, oh my gosh, is Danny here?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what?
I haven't seen you guys, like your faces.
We don't post ourselves a lot.
Keep
It's something we have to get better at.
I try to avoid that, but I do as well.
Yeah.
So for this last segment, we want to talk about the business of design.
Yeah.
So what has been your experience? What are you like excited about in this aspect? What are you really good at? What advice do you have for people maybe like entering the field or working with you? Give us the scoop, I guess.
Okay, good.
You want me to say? Okay. So for me, I mean, the advice is ultimately you have to love what you're doing, regardless of what it is, right? So the reason that we sometimes don't post ourselves a lot, we want to have that authentic approach. Like, so we like our work to reflect what we love. And so what we love is the items, what we love is the story. And anybody that is interested in design or in design and interested in the arbitrage of design, you have to want to do what you love. And if you don't love it, it won't be reflective when it comes to the transaction and asking for that money from that person.
Right.
And that first, you have to over give in value, not only in terms of the item, but in terms of the experience and us being prepared in the knowledge we have on the piece or the restoration process. And also just our preparation and going to buy the thing and offering the money to the person that has emotional attachment to the thing. The fact that we love the thing, we love design, we love the intrinsic value that things have, help us make our job easier on a business level. And so Jade really has helped tie that in for me because of her background. But it's the love and it's having just the genuine care. And that helps then the money part of it. So
yeah, for instance, like just to tag on that, when we first started, it was, how do we move past just the buying and the selling?
Yeah.
Like, how do we move past just, okay, I find the item, I showcase it on Instagram,
it has
anything
some
like
value.
that. Yeah, it has value already built in.
Yeah.
And then selling it to the right person that it speaks to or they love it or anything like that.
Yeah.
But how do we go beyond that, or like our peers? Like what kind of relationship do we want to have with others that might be competition, but in reality are our peers? And so it's like, how do we bridge that where it's more of a community versus well, I have this, and let's say somebody comes into the shop. Oh, I'm looking for a credenza, and it's got to be this long and this. Sometimes real specific. And instead of saying, we'll say sometimes like, oh, okay, yeah, sounds good. Maybe we might not have it right now, but we'll have it maybe in due time. You could be on a list or be with us on Instagram. The one thing that we changed was we said, in a way, how can we do this without others? Like, it's, in other words, let's talk about the people that do have other shops. Like, why are we? There shouldn't be no hiding. Yeah, exactly. And so
I like that. I like
how
that
could we be
too.
an ecosystem?
I like that too. And it's also, I think, for me, when I think about what you just said, you learn from others.
Exactly.
And sometimes, you can partner as well.
Exactly. And so then you make into a community where it's you know, instead of just saying, oh, just come to my store. Yes, we have a brand. Yes, we want to, you know, bridge on that and grow on that. But then how do you create a community? You know, and it's not just all you. We just don't have just the inventory that somebody might want. Somebody else maybe down the street that has a store that can fulfill that need that they want, the customers looking
For
for.
a markup.
I mean, here's the thing that.
Built-in fee.
Well, I'm gonna add to that.
I mean, why not? I
Yeah.
mean, it's business, right? But
Yeah.
why not? It adds value too.
It does,
you know?
and so when they hear that, they're just kind of like, oh, thanks, you know, we appreciate it, and a lot of times they come back and they're like, no, we really like our experience here and how you treat me, because you make me feel like I'm not tied really necessarily to anything. You're not pressuring me. You're not making me feel like if I don't get this piece, you know, that I'm not going to talk to you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's very, you know, it's very relationship building and how we sell. So it's almost like we're not salesmen when it comes to selling our pieces. It's almost like, how can we build that relationship when it's, you know, when we can, you know, it's like Danny said, you know, when it's more that person looking for more, we'll put more into.
Yes.
And instead of like, let's say if something breaks on somebody's piece that we send to New York, we'll try to, you know, partner up with another business that maybe can do a repair or send them like a care kit, you know, and so we'll try to do those extra things because we're thinking, well, how do we want to be treated if that was done to us?
Yes.
I like that. I think that speaks to a certain kind of generosity in doing business, and I think you mentioned earlier. One of you said like, you know, you try to not just give them the thing, but also make that experience like a pleasant experience, maybe a learning experience. And I think I try to do the same thing in kind of my world.
Yeah.
You have to basically you have to over produce, like
give value.
Just to kind of give people more value than what even they expect.
Exactly.
And I think that's actually very wise. Because, you know, there's this whole philosophy, the more you give, the more you get back. It's not that you're doing it to get something back, but I think the universe kind of works that way anyways, not to be super mystical.
No, that's exactly our approach.
But I really like that, and I think that you guys strike me as like such like a young couple, but you do things so well, and when you speak, you know, there's like so much wisdom, I think.
We don't think
kind of
that
how,
sometimes, but
how you even run your business.
Yeah.
So I think that was so cool.
Thank you.
And dope. Being that this is a dope designer club, right? So for the last segment, Tanner and I came up with something fun, and it's a couples challenge.
All right, cool.
And so there's going to be a couple of questions, and both of you are going to answer them.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter in which order; they're just fun. And
we
never do this.
It feels like a '60s like dating game or like, you know, a couples game. You know, that's cool.
So you can both just answer the questions.
Right,
There's
cool.
5, I think, questions.
We have a buzzer.
All right. Who has better taste?
Oh, I would say Danny, because he got trained and everything. I think he introduced me to that.
I wouldn't say I have better taste. I think you have great taste. I would say I just have more information to draw from.
Yes.
And so I tend to maybe sometimes
more
think like
context.
there's more rules in my mind,
Yes.
where you're more creative.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I give you credit for being the creativity that sometimes expands on the rigid design rules that I tend to kind of adhere to at times.
I love that. I love that. That's like what this podcast is about. Second question is, who's your favorite child?
Oh my God! Oh wow! You're gonna get us in trouble.
Right?
It's on camera.
Did we mention we had 2?
Oh my God!
That's why I'm asking.
Our dog. I'm just kidding.
Right? He was giving me problems.
Do we have to answer that one, Bronco?
No. I think that out of both kids, it's really cool because our son is a lot like us, so we can connect with him on a lot of things, interests. I mean, things. Even like when we're driving around, he'll be like, "Mom, I want to live in that house. It's modern. It's this." It's that. So he totally connects on that.
Yeah.
And then my little girl, she's very.
I guess it's his.
Yeah, I
too.
know.
Sorry. Our little girl is the exact opposite, and she compliments us so well. Just being out there, and like you said earlier, bringing in color. I mean, she's exactly that. She's the brightness that we need.
Yeah.
So no.
Well, what I was gonna say is that it's like that yin and yang that we have. Like
Oh, big time.
the creative one, and then the more introverted one that is more rigid, and then they play. I'm gonna kind of take a pass on that one. I'm gonna ask you some questions if that's okay, Bronca.
Totally.
Okay,
Go for
so
it. I'm
you
having trouble
mentioned-
reading my own handwriting.
I listened to a few of your podcasts.
Oh yeah.
I know you're a big fan of the Eameses, but I know that there's a world outside of that. What are your inspirations outside of? Because we're in California, right? We tend to think a lot of the Eameses, a lot of the the Eichler homes. The California aesthetic is like a really big overarching theme that a lot of people that are into mid-century tend to like. It's almost like overstated.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
have any favorite designers or architects that are outside of that scope?
Oh, of course. I have
Yeah.
a lot. Like, I don't have one favorite architect. I don't have one favorite anything.
That's
really. I'd say like, I really. You asked me a question that's like gonna make me talk for another.
No, that's cool.
Like Glenn Murcutt, for example, is
Okay.
an Australian architect. Does these like really cool sustainable houses. He did get a Pritzker Prize, but
Oh,
it's
wow.
not very well known.
Okay.
But it's just like, for example, one of his things is like to just thread on the earth lightly, to
Wow.
make design that's not about just like flash and
Yeah.
like, I think a lot of design is very sensationalist.
Yeah.
And I think my approach is kind of the opposite of
Yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
which is also like my personal style.
Yeah.
To never be flashy, but to
Yeah.
be timeless
Yeah.
and like to really, I guess, build value for the people I'm doing this
Yeah,
for.
That's really cool.
I love people like Herzog and de Meuron.
Okay.
I actually like their early work
Okay.
a lot. They're Swiss architects. I spent a lot of time growing up in
awesome.
Switzerland.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot of cool architecture there.
Yeah.
I really like actually Los Angeles modernism.
Okay.
And I think this movement that you're also promoting
Yeah, yeah.
is a very important design movement globally.
Yeah.
I think before this movement, because it kind of commercialized it
Yeah,
at the
for
time.
sure.
And
Yeah.
it made it like it made it available to the masses. And I
Yes.
think that's very important because the world, I think before that was very like different. Like houses were like cottages.
Yes.
Like it was a totally different
Yeah.
aesthetic. And I think
Yeah.
this kind of
Yeah.
made it kind of cool for the world.
That's cool.
So, and I think LA in general,
Yeah.
like, I think we live in a very creative city.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of cool people doing cool things everywhere. And I think that's also where I draw inspiration
awesome.
from. And I draw inspiration from you as well.
Well,
So,
that's cool. We're grateful that you even think of us in that light.
yeah. Let's get back to the couples
All right.
game
All
here.
right.
I want- Who's the better driver?
Oh man.
This
That's
is more
debatable.
important. This is so
That
important.
is debatable. He has to be careful with his answer. I could tell already. But it's debatable. The kids say I'm a better driver, but he would disagree.
I knew this one will pull
I
out.
would say that I'm the better navigator.
Ooh,
There you go. Yes.
I would say that Jade is the safer driver.
I see.
Yes.
Very, very politically
I
correct.
failed one of my driving tests because I was going too slow. That's
So if I want to get there safely, I'm going to talk to Jade. But if I want to get there, I'm going to drive.
yes.
Who drove here?
I
Oh, okay.
Because we're running late.
Always. Who's more likely to end up in prison?
Oh my God. Probably her.
I was gonna say him. Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Yeah, I don't know.
So yes, I do things, I guess you could say, that would get me in trouble because I sometimes like to feel nervous in the way of doing something that's going to get me out of my shell. So
Yes.
and sometimes that gets me in trouble. So I could say that.
Man, I didn't know I was going to get grilled this way. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, maybe I would come up with like some like multi-level marketing scheme that would get me in trouble somehow. I don't know. I don't know.
I think it's highly unlikely that either of you are going to make it there. Who made the first move?
I did,
Good.
but it wasn't for the reasons that are traditional in the sense, right?
Right. Yeah, I was like.
But I would say
karate
that
here.
you're more of a first move person.
So for me, it was like when we met, I was like, don't ask me to be your girlfriend. Don't ask me to be anything. If we just like fall in love, that's what it's gonna be. And
Yeah.
so it was always like, if I feel that it's good inside, then that's when we'll be boyfriend and girlfriend. So.
And I tend to overthink before the situation even happens. So it's the same way I approach buying and selling or marketing. I overthink it first, and when I'm ready, I'm like ready and I do it,
Oh,
and then it's done, right? So yeah, I made the first move, but she's more extroverted in that sense.
yeah, very good.
Yeah.
And then my final question for you as a couple: what's your favorite chair?
Oh my God. I'll let Jade answer this. I don't know if I have one, so I'll let Jade answer this.
That's a really hard one. I feel like if you were to tell me the designer wise, I would pick Maloof because that's like one of my first, Sam Maloof, which is like my first, I guess, introduction into design, the design world. And I honestly just like the process of, I know his chairs are very, extravagant or the big horned kind of, look to them. But it just like the type of wood that he used at that time was safer to use. Now it's extinct, or trying to be careful with it, but it's in danger. There you go. But I loved how everything he took into account, the body, the how you sat in it, how it felt. He took account into like the way the arms were curved and like how would your hands be placed. So that's the kind of like thing I would look into.
You like that one-on-one design?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
For me, I mean, I guess I'm basic. I love but if you're gonna give me an Eames chair, it has to be a first generation 1956 Eames chair with down-filled cushions in a custom color, not black, in a custom color.
I like that.
And,
what would be the custom color?
Olive green. They also did like a burnt orange. Sometimes they did tan leather. It was if the customer was willing to pay for it, I'm gonna let the Eames Foundation or somebody that's more. But I tend to find out when I get pieces that were customized, they custom ordered them from the factory, so they were able to choose their color palette. A lot of them are rosewood, but they were able to even say, okay, I want it in ash or I want it in walnut, and they could choose the finishes. Give me one of those chairs and let me just pick the color that I want, olive green, and even with some patina to it. But as long as it's a functional chair, that's my chair.
Awesome.
I would choose that.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys.
Oh, thank you.
This was so much fun. I know you
I know.
so well now, and I'm sure we'll stay friends. And you're welcome to come back anytime.
Thank you.
And I hope we even collaborate maybe.
I hope we get to expand on it a little bit. As far as like a little bit more about some of the more designer chairs that people ask about. So much of it that we approach is the thought process behind it, and then sometimes people ask us like, well, what about the chair? And I just maybe next time we can talk about that a little more.
Yeah, anytime. Anytime
you,
you're willing to drive back.
Yeah, hey.
That's not for an hour.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So I love this. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Bronca.
All right.
Thank you.
Guys, a hug.
Thank you so much, Bronca.
Thank you. So great. This was great. Let's have some refreshments. Do you guys want to try the brandy now? That's
I mean, yeah.